welcome back to my author commentary for A Prince of Song and Shade. Today we're up to chapter 19. I'm going to throw in chapter 20 as well because it's a relatively short chapter, so we'll tie those in together. But let's dive in first to chapter 19. So Talyn receives a mysterious little note slid under her door. She and Sari immediately bicker about whether it's wise to follow the instructions on that note, which is to go and meet in the Alea Stadium at midnight on her own and bring no backup. Talyn argues that this individual might have information she needs to complete her mission. Sari points out, rightly, that it could be a trap, potentially laid by Mathanas, potentially laid by someone else. They also bicker back and forth about the Shadowhawk. Sari continues to be a little uneasy about the fact that Talyn is so willingly working alongside a criminal, not only working alongside him, but actively helping him in his efforts. And once again, Talyn points out that she's got good reasons for doing what she's doing. I feel like Sari has the better argument and logic here, but anywho. Of course, Talyn goes to the meeting, and it's interesting as she kind of heads there, walking through the Citadel in the middle of the night. She's often reflected in past scenes that how beautiful the Citadel is at night with its lights and the scent of flowers on the air and the warmth. And this is the very first time she's walking through the Citadel at night, and it feels creepy to her. She's nervous, she's agitated. The longer she walks, the more kind of creeped out she feels, and that has a lot to do with what she saw in that room where Ursel Goldfeather and Adrian Iceflight were murdered in the last chapter. And it's the first time she's, I guess, felt unsafe up at the Citadel. Of course, it's the Shadowhawk that put the note under her door. Cuinn, as reflected in the chapter immediately before this, wants to have a chat to her about what the heck is going on with these horrible murders, with his arrow being found at the scene, the torn cat kitten, all of it. And so we get another really fun cat and mouse kind of conversation between Talyn and the Shadowhawk. It's interesting, she notes at one point he's so kind of intense and so passionate, but he has a really strangely bland human face that doesn't quite match his level of intensity and charisma and passion for what he's doing and the way he talks, which is an interesting nod to the glamour that he uses to make himself look unremarkable. Of course, his face is Prince Cuinn, but he isn't always as disciplined as usual when he's speaking to Talyn. The more he gets to know her, the more he's always kind of liked her, but that obviously starts to deepen the more he spends time with her. And there's a moment where his voice, he's quite amused by something she says, and she picks up that amusement in his voice and she almost connects it to Cuinn because she's heard that before, it's familiar. But the circumstances are still so different, and there's no, I guess, logic connected yet for her to make that leap, but she certainly notes it, and it is a slip up on his behalf. The two of them have quite a good rhythm. They're starting to build this really nice kind of brainstorming. They kind of go back and forth on some of the reasoning for what might be behind the murders, who might be behind it, and the steps that they can take separately to try and figure out more information. And that's fun. That was really fun for me. I think particularly right from the start of this book, where Talyn made that active choice to come back to Mithrena and made the active choice to start working with the Shadowhawk. The two of them have quite a connection, quite a kind of instinctive connection, and that there's a lot of suspicion and mistrust on both sides for good reason, but that kind of connection makes them kind of into a budding team, a really well working team, and one that both of them I think really enjoy, and is kind of part of that. Although she'll never admit it at this point, Talyn's motivation for doing what she's doing, despite Sari's repeated pointing out that maybe it's not the best path to take. Having said that, by the end of this conversation, Sari has kind of flipped her view on the Shadowhawk and is all like, he's great, let's keep doing this, which makes me chuckle a little bit too. Sari's such a great character, even though she no longer lives. We then jump into chapter 20, which is what happens next from Cuinn's perspective once the two of them have this conversation and kind of settle on what they're going to do next. We get a little bit of a look of how kind of onerous and detailed Cuinn's process in terms of turning himself into the Shadowhawk and back out, and the measures that he needs to take to make sure that no one sees him, to make sure no one can make a connection between the two. I mean, to be honest, it all sounds very uncomfortable. He's constantly in that hot cloak and soaked in sweat, and it just sounds a bit gross, but he does have to do a lot of work, and that takes a lot of discipline, and he's been doing that for years. So it's just another testament to Cuinn's dedication to what he's doing as the Shadowhawk. He heads off to search Iceflight's quarters to see whether there's any evidence or information there that might help explain what is going on. And of course runs into Zamril, which is hilarious because he's there doing the exact same thing. And they're both there for very similar motives. Cuinn because the Shadowhawk is being framed. Zamril because he feels like Captain Dynan, his captain, is being framed. Which obviously when he mentions it horrifies Cuinn as well. He's not pleased to hear that. But it's really no surprise, even as early as this, that Zamril ends up being Talyn's calendar partner when they bond at the end of A Duet of Sword and Song. He is very dedicated to her, and this is exactly what a calendar partner would be doing in this instance, irrespective of what the consequences might be. Zamril is there trying to figure out and make sure that Talyn is safe. He has her back no matter what. And then we get a kind of a fun scene that's like we have a Shadow Song Mage in the Shadowhawk versus a Calanan thief in Zamril versus a fully trained, experienced, and very skilled Shadow, who then is the third party that shows up in Iceflight's bedroom looking for information. Zamril and Cuinn hide under the bed. Cuinn uses his shadow magic to hide them. And that man, for those of you who may not have picked up on it already, is obviously Sarvan removing evidence from Idrin Iceflight's room that connected him to Azralan. Sarvan / Narvis being Azralan Tarkos's man acting on Azralan's behalf. But what was in the safe? If you have any guesses, I'd love to know. Put them in the comments below. If anyone guesses it right, I might let you know in the next video what was in that safe. The little interactions they have and the fact that Cuinn, the Shadowhawk, is even there in that room searching doesn't help Zamril's suspicions about who the Shadowhawk might be either, and we get a little hint of that towards the end of the scene. So more mystery and more intrigue piled on top of here. We're really getting into the guts of this story. It's a lot of fun. I love writing this kind of level of intrigue and mystery. I love writing Zamril scenes, and I love writing the Shadowhawk Talyn conversations as their kind of relationship starts to develop. That's a lot of fun. I hope you're enjoying it too. If you have any questions at all, as always, drop them in the comments below. I'll answer them happily. More than happy to talk more about this one and in future videos if you'd like me to. Otherwise, I really look forward to seeing you in chapter 21. I hope you have a great day. Bye.